Thank you very, very much. And Mary, thank you so much for that kind introduction. She has done such an incredible job as the president of the Washington Education Association. Mary and I have worked together for a very long time to make education better in our state, and I know this organization and our state are better off because of her work. Mary, thank you very much. I am so grateful to be here with you all today. As someone who's had a great deal of experience knocking on doors and speaking up to support education, yes, in my tennis shoes often, I want to congratulate all of you on your efforts to change things for the better in Olympia. Serving in the United States Senate means that you speak to a lot of different groups in a lot of different places, but I can tell you, I feel most at home in a room full of teachers right here in Washington State. And I can honestly say to all of you, I have really been looking forward to speaking here to all of you today. You know, I was thinking about a speech that I gave to a group of teachers at WEA about 20 years ago when I was first running for the United States Senate. No one was giving me a chance. I was a real long shot. But I wasn't running because I had a chance. I was just so tired of all those guys in blue suits and red ties making all the decisions about my kids and my family and my community. I came to your convention and I told you about how I'd been mocked for being a mom in tennis shoes and that I couldn't make a difference. You all stood up for me. You stood behind me, and together we beat the odds, and I stand before you today as your United States Senator. Thank you. Now, as many of you know, it was my own experiences as a preschool teacher and a mother that got me into politics in the first place. In fact, I was doing the exact same thing that all of you are doing right now, fighting for what I believed in, organizing a grassroots group of local parents to save a preschool in Olympia that was going to be eliminated. And I ended up saving that program, teaching in that school, going on to serve in my local school board, winning a seat in the state Senate by running a campaign focused on education, and then talking about those same passions when I first ran for the United States Senate. You see, I learned about the importance of education long before my first campaign. When I was growing up, I had a big family, 6 brothers and sisters, but when I became a teenager, my dad, who was a World War II veteran, was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. And in just a few years, his illness got very bad and he couldn't work anymore. So very quickly, my big family fell on very hard times. But we were lucky enough to live in a country where the government didn't just say, tough luck. When we faced those tough family budgets and hard times, our government was there to give us a helping hand. We lived on food stamps for a while. My dad got benefits as a veteran. My mom got help going back to school to get a degree so she could work and put food on the table. But nothing did more for my brothers and sisters and me than the public schools we attended. The opportunity we had to go to public school in our hometown of Bothell and then on to college, each one of us is a big part of why we've all been able to succeed. So when I talk to people about the importance of education, whether it's a room full of teachers or business leaders or colleagues or elected officials, anyone, that's my perspective. It's our government's responsibility to make sure all of our kids have an opportunity in this great country we are so lucky to live in. For me, this is not a political issue, and for me, investing in our teachers and our schools isn't just a talking point. I know from experience that it's the most important thing we can do to strengthen our communities and build our economy. That's what made me become a preschool teacher. It's why you chose to be a teacher, and it's what we work on every time we gather together. Now, I learned a long time ago, you have to fight for what you believe in. And it's not news to any of you here. As teachers, as parents, as advocates for education, we continue to face some very difficult challenges. The last few years have been tough. Our economy has suffered. Our budgets have tightened. All of you have had to do more with less in your own personal lives and in your classrooms. And just when we need good schools and good teachers the most, we've seen our education system caught up in the middle of bitter political fights, not just in Washington, D.C., but right here at home in Washington State. Again, this isn't news to you. You experience the challenges that schools face every day, and you know firsthand what it takes to help even a single child succeed. But for me, as your United States Senator and as someone who spends half my time here and half my time across the country in the other Washington, I rely a lot on what families tell me to know what's really happening for them and what they care about. So I wanted to tell you today about a letter I received a couple of years ago from a teacher in Bellingham that's really stuck with me. This woman wrote a letter, and it wasn't easy. She said, like so many teachers I meet, she's tough. She grew up homeless, and for her, school was the only way to make a better life. And she made a vow to one of her teachers, one of the people she called the giants of her life, to become a teacher herself if she could one day escape poverty. And with a lot of hard work and sacrifice, she made it. She became a teacher. And then she started a family of her own. And she was so proud when her son followed her example and became a teacher too. But one day, a few days before she wrote me this letter, he called her to say he was going to leave the profession. He told her there are people who shouldn't be teachers, just as there are bad apples in every profession. But now, he said, every teacher gets painted with the same brush, and the profession he'd chosen to become one of the giants of his mother's childhood bears the brunt of budget cuts and personal political attacks. This woman knew what her son was going through. Broke her heart because she remembered what the giants of her childhood meant to her, and she knew what her son meant to his students. She knew that good teachers change lives, but she couldn't deny that it had become harder and harder to be a teacher. Every year, we face tougher challenges and deeper cuts to education funding. Cuts from sequestration or sapping our schools of the resources they need to be successful. Conservatives back in Washington, D.C. are proposing even more cuts to education, the programs you rely on. As the education world changes around us, you're forced to adapt at warp speed to changes in teacher evaluations and curricula and assessments. More than ever before, the role that teachers play in our communities and in our children's lives is being questioned. Debate on unions and school choice and even the structure of public education in this country has entered the political stage. And let me tell you, I know it gets ugly in politics. These are tough challenges. Believe me, I know they are. But that's why I've been looking forward to speaking to all of you, because I want to talk to you about how we're going to keep moving forward, because we need great people to be teachers, and it's important that all of you are part of this conversation. If we want our nation and our economy to compete and win in the 21st century, we have to keep improving our education system. And we know we can, because together we have achieved a lot. In extremely difficult budget climates here in Washington State and at the federal level, we've fought for the education funding to give our schools the resources they need, despite those who wanted to cut it a lot more. We have worked together to reduce class sizes because we know students in smaller classes are more likely to finish high school and graduate with honors and go on to college, and we need to keep working on that. We fought for $10 billion in education jobs funding to help retain teacher jobs in Washington and across the country when our economy collapsed. We've supported Head Start and expanded programs that help at-risk and low-income students get the specific resources they need. And we have secured federal school improvement grants for 27 schools in Washington state, and those schools are outpacing the competition in every other state in this country. But despite those accomplishments, we all know there's a lot of work to be done. We have to professionalize teaching. Our teachers should be evaluated in ways that help them become better. That means basing evaluations on multiple measures, providing teachers with useful information and feedback on their performance, not just using evaluations in a punitive way. And fostering schools where teachers are supported and provided with the professional development you need, not placed under a microscope. And if we attract and want to attract and retain good teachers for our schools, we have to improve working conditions and compensation. If we're going to, you can applaud. If we are going to trust our educators with our children's future, then we need to provide you with the resources and, just as important, the respect that you deserve. That means a competitive wage, support systems, mentorship programs that help young teachers learn from seasoned veterans, time to plan and collaborate, and schools focused on what's most important, providing a good education for all of our children. Those aren't just feel-good mottos, those are principles worth fighting for. And I don't need to tell you this, but it's teachers, not lawmakers, who know best how to educate our kids. All of you know what it takes for them to succeed, and that means focusing not just on funding our schools, it means supporting programs and best practices that make the most of the education budgets we do have. In addition to those smaller classes and innovative learning programs, we have to incorporate technology into our courses and lessons plans. We have to reinvest in the STEM programs to close the skills gap and prepare our kids for an economy that's driven by innovation in science and math and engineering. And while we are striving to do more for our students on the cutting edge, we can never abandon our commitment to educating each and every child in our communities. So we cannot use difficult budgets as an excuse to cut back on programs for at-risk students and children with disabilities who rely on those programs tailored to their needs. But most of all, we need to renew our commitment to putting results for our children first, and I know that's a priority you all share. Now, I can tell you, because I've spent more than two decades in Congress, that in fights like the one going on in education right now, you're not going to get everything you want. You know, just this year, I took on the role as chair of the Senate Budget Committee. I was faced with a daunting task. Divided Senate, committee with members from all over the political spectrum. I was told I was crazy to even think I might be able to do this. Even Grover Norquist said I couldn't do it. You know what he said? He said, the lady from Washington can't do budgets. But you know what? I've been called a mom in tennis shoes before. I've been told I can't do things. I knew it needed to be done. I knew we needed to show that people that our investments in education and infrastructure and our people are just as important as our deficits. And I knew we could and had to fight this battle and make it important once again. So despite what everyone said to me, I worked my tail off, and I got a budget passed, the first one in 4 years in the United States Senate. Now, we have a long ways to go yet. I have to sit across from Paul Ryan and figure out where to go. But I did this by doing two things: working with my colleagues to find compromises and never abandoning my principles. That's the approach we need to move forward with education. Work with everyone, but do not abandon your principles. We're not going to get everything we want, but we don't have to abandon our commitment to stand with teachers to improve our schools and do more for our kids. So as we move forward, we must be ready to change with the times. We've got to adapt to difficult circumstances, but we are never going to give up on our principles. I know when you decided to make education your profession, you didn't do it for the money or the prestige. I know when you signed up to be teachers, you knew it wasn't going to be easy. You wouldn't hear the word thank you all that often, and sometimes it would be difficult to change things for the better. But you signed up anyway. Why? Because you wanted to make a difference in your children's lives. You wanted to pass on a better world for the next generation, and you wanted the world of opportunities to be a part of every child's life. And when you go to work every day, that is exactly what you're doing, making a difference for children across this state. So while you're working to improve our education system, it's never been more important to stick to your principles of fighting for our kids, demanding the resources you need, and getting the respect you deserve. But most of all, this fight is going to require you each and every day to remember why you all one day decided to become a teacher. And as you go back here, leave here, go back to your classrooms, work to make our schools what we need them to be, it's gonna be tough. But I'm here to tell you, do not give up. Do not give up. And remember the lesson I learned many, many years ago. When someone tells you you can't make a difference, it's usually because they're afraid you will. Thank you very, very much. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Can't tell you how much better I sleep knowing that you're extended every day.
So glad you showed Nordquist a thing or two.